Good morning. I'm Liz Benkovich with the Buffalo Niagara Partnership. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your presence. Today's presentation is a timely one, and judging from the number of you that registered, it's really a very important topic. A re-entry plan for today, a strategy for the office of tomorrow. Today's been made possible by Bergman, architects, engineers, and planners. And we'll begin in just a few minutes. I want to let you know that there will be a Q&A session following the presentation. So if you look at the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A, you can type in a question. And at the end, we will have Bergman's team answer those. If there are more questions than can be answered, the team has confirmed that they can answer them following the webisode today. So I'd like to welcome the Bergman team and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm Suzanne Lefebvre. I am an interior designer in the Rochester office. I work primarily in our workplace design and commercial with our commercial clients. I also work in higher education and the municipal market as well.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Jim Marshner. I'm Bergman's Environmental Health and Safety Manager, and in my role, I maintain our corporate health and safety plan and policies, create health and safety plans for projects, and just work together with our employees to see that they're safe in the work that they're doing. I'm one of the earliest members to engage in the COVID-19 response team, including putting together our own return to work plan.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Evan Decotis, also part of our Bergman COVID team here. My work focus as a mechanical engineer is going into existing buildings and doing audits and surveys. So this really kind of tied in nicely, unfortunately, with the tasks and what we're looking at hand.
Just a little bit about Bergman. We are a nationally recognized architectural engineering and planning firm. We have 6 offices in the upstate New York area, one of which is in Buffalo. We've been in the greater Buffalo area for about 36 years. We have 450 employees currently working from home. But as of last week, we have been slowly re-entering into our workplace. I am actually here today in the Rochester office. Evan as well, he's in another room in the Rochester office. So we are happy to be sharing our information with you. So why are we here today talking with all of you? Our focus really is on getting everyone back into your space safely. Jim, Evan, and I are part of a resilient design team, and we have been helping our clients, in our workplace clients, our educational clients, and our hospitality clients re-enter their spaces safely. We have just recently introduced our own internal plan, and we want to take what we have learned from it and share it with you. We know you have immediate concerns, and we want to focus on that as well as also looking at the longer term. So we have 3 topics we're going to be talking about today. The initial planning, the aspect of how we re-entered our workspace, the design of the workspace, and the HVAC systems, which some of you may not be thinking about right now, but it's definitely one of the longer term items that you will be thinking about, and it's one of the more complex. So Jim will be starting us off.
Thank you, Suzanne. So understanding we need a starting point, let's look at some initial planning surrounding COVID-19. So all the entries here assist us in understanding the issue associated with COVID-19 virus and provide us with some sort of starting point. There are a number of sources for directives and guidance that include federal, state, and local government. Planning will involve a combination of these sources. So our actions and our plans we create and implement will aid in the protection of people and our operations, Each of these items listed here are the steps we currently understand to be the best protections from the virus. Communication, consider your message you send to your employees. Include everyone on your team in your communications. Teamwork and honesty are the key in the messages we send. Additionally, we need to recognize that it's okay to let employees know that we don't understand everything about COVID-19 and that we're shaping our plans and policies as more information becomes available, that there will be change, but it will be according to our new understanding. In addition to our messages, there's a need to communicate our plans with signage and other required direction that we'll visit later on in this presentation. So it's a correct combination of all these items in our return to work planning that can assist us in returning to work under this new normal until we can get beyond that current pandemic or this current pandemic. So in our initial planning, as we begin addressing the COVID-19 issue, we need to take a look at how to return people to work safely. And this includes evaluating the space, but also weighing in that people's perceptions and sometimes fears play into this a little bit as well. Remember, COVID-19 has different consequences for those who may be immunocompromised or have concerns about exposures to others, like they're caring for children or caring for older adults, or any other number of given factors. There are directives and guidance that we need to review and implement. Shown here to the right are a number that are provided by state and federal entities offering COVID-19 specific guidance. Again, these are changing. They do appear new. The one OSHA document somewhere in the middle here, the guidance on returning to work, was just issued this June. And in all of our planning, we should consider working with the building managers of our facilities. So in continuing our conversation about building management, sometimes we can become so deeply involved in our own business and our space planning that a relationship with our building management may be overlooked as a potential partner. So collaboration with building management may be an important part of your return to work plan. And understanding that you may be returning to a building with new rules. That may include the need to notify a building manager of your return, so that allows them to do some prep work and cleaning. In addition, building management may have their own rules regarding face coverings and social distancing, cleaning and reporting of positive cases within their building and their spaces. So it's also important to share here that know that commercial building management and the other various industries all have their own set of forward New York guideline rules that they're required to follow and affirm. You'll want to know what the building function and how it will function upon your reentry into the space. So how will entries and exits flow? How will shared spaces now work and be used? Who will review HVAC systems? And how will cleaning and enhanced cleanings be conducted? And of course, all of this leads back to communications. Share this information that building managers will provide and what they're doing with your employees, so they'll know what to expect as they return. As most of us, we don't like the unknowns. So the sharing of frequent information with employees may limit those back to work first day surprises and create a less stressful experience. So let's just take a moment to discuss team. It's a good idea to build your team to work through a return to work plan. So as an example, this slide depicts the Bergman engaged team that we put together internally in our planning of our return to work. So our teamwork involved an assembly of people with different specialties that assisted in our planning or that provided direct and frequent communication with our employees. Your team might look quite different. You may have more people involved, less people involved, and that's okay. The takeaway here is to engage your employees that are most knowledgeable about your business to assist you through your planning and your communication. So in my role, and as do my associates, I review articles, professional papers, and studies to gather information that might be useful. The slide to the right presents a depiction from a webinar poll conducted by Veriforce PEC Safety. Within the last 2 weeks, this slide was actually presented from a webinar that they had presented. It shows some aspects of the return to work plan, and the respondents here clearly show concern for the acquisition of supplies and adhering to requirements as their top 2 concerns for returning to work. You may find that you share the same concerns, or you may be different, but the polling was interesting here as to where people's concerns were. Remember, members lend a specialty to the team that may assist in bringing your concerns to the forefront and allow you to address issues up front in your planning. So when it comes to the expertise required, no one person knows all aspects of the business, and that's why we have various departments within our businesses. So look to assemble your team to provide the expertise you need to create a workable return to work plan. In the current climate, with new information continually forthcoming, there will be a need to continue to watch for updates or new guidance as changes occur. An example is yesterday's new travel advisory for the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey area. And as we learn more about the virus, there may be changes in protection that may be needed. So I believe most recognize that at any stage, it's always of great benefit to any organization to take those best practices and those lessons learned that we garner from this and apply them to future situations. And these won't only include the pandemic that we're currently witnessing, but now could include other business interruptions like fire, weather, or even cold and flu season. Taking a moment to discuss New York guidance for reopening. It's available on the state website at the forwardnewyork.gov website. Navigating the state provided site, you locate your industry within the various phases surrounding the regional reopening. The site also provides a web-based health and safety plan template, which is downloadable as a PDF. The depiction on the right-hand side of the slide is the opening page of the summary guidance document, and in this specific case, phase 2 reopening of office-based work guidelines. Again, this is the summary document split up into mandatory and recommended best practices. So I recommend you review the summary guidelines, but don't count on this alone. You will need to read and affirm the detailed guidelines. And this is where you're going to find the specifics and provide a detail and direction that you'll be affirming in your submission to the state. Step 3, complete and print your business safety plan template. So this is actually a requirement. So they provided the template and you can provide your answers within that template. I added my own step 4, implement your plan. That's going to be important in implementing the practices that you say you're going to do and need to affirm as a mandatory practice in your business. So New York State guidance documents. The summary provided categorizes mandatory and recommended practices surrounding your industry. But again, the detailed guidelines contains the requirements that you should evaluate to fit your industry and implement. You're going to navigate through mandatory best practices, should, mays, and considers, and implement those things that you believe will protect your own people. In the safety plan template, should you not create your own plan, this is a great starting point. And one of the mandatory practices is having this readily available. So you'll fill in the blanks regarding people, places, processes, contact tracing, and other points that are specific to your industry and your guidance. So each business or entity must develop this written safety plan outlining how the workplace is going to prevent the spread of COVID-19. You may fill out the template to fulfill this requirement, or you can develop your own plan. Signage and communication are an important part of the guidance, and there are required postings to be located throughout your facility and at the entrance. Other items like keeping cleaning logs, visitor logs, requirements for conspicuously posting your health and safety plan are part of this communication. So located on the right side of this slide is the affirmation statement in your submission to the state. And then you, upon providing this affirmation to the state, you will receive a receipt from the state that says they received your submission. We've had instances where we've needed to provide that to clients as a copy of their record keeping. So in using all of the guidance documents and creating the plan and assessing everything, we created a plan guide to returning to the workplace for our employees. And this, along with our COVID-19 health and safety plan, were issued to employees for their review. And it's at this point I'm going to lend this off to Suzanne for some further information on what was involved in that plan.
Thanks, Jim. So workspace design. We're going to talk a little bit about how we went through our plan. But before we did that, we did do a corporate internal survey. This was sent out by our leadership team to all the employees at Bergman. This was sent out to understand how people were feeling from working from home. So there were questions ranging from logistics and any communication concerns, technology concerns, but we also asked about what the biggest concern in returning to the office was and what Bergman could do to alleviate those concerns. Leadership team and Jim's advisory team then took these and we implemented these as part of our return to work. So when the policies and guidelines were created, this is when the interior designers and architects started looking at our floor plan. And there are 4 key points we wanted to highlight. Obviously, the first one is review the policies and the guidelines with your advisory team. So we worked with Jim on reviewing the circulation of the space, as well as how the space was going to be impacted by people, and if any of the spaces required special guidelines. Focusing on health and well-being, where can you mitigate risk and minimize the amount of people? And what areas we have to consider for special guidelines. And then for code compliancy and inclusion, this is something you want to keep in mind when you are reconfiguring your space and altering the circulation. You have to stay within your building codes and fire codes. You can't block egress corridors. You want to make sure you're not taking any bathroom fixtures or sinks offline, specifically ADA compliant fixtures. And you want to avoid, for instance, if you want better circulation, you can't prop open fire doors. Those have to remain closed. And then in the end, what does your culture require? The state and federal guidelines help with the physical space and the safety of the space, but really you're going to want to figure out how your business wants to work. Are you going to stagger people in different hours of the day? Are you going to alternate days? Are you only going to come in on an as-needed basis? That's going to help inform how you reconfigure your space. And then next few slides, we're going to look at some floor plans. This is of our Rochester office, but these best practices can be translated to any workspace. We started with our circulation plan. We have a centralized check-in and monitoring area. This is where visitors check in and they fill out the required paperwork. We also have employees coming in here at this same entrance, and this is where they're going to be reminded of proper hygiene, the 6-foot distancing, and also if there's any updates. As Jim was saying, policies and guidelines are changing almost daily. So this is where we will be notifying everybody of that. We have one-way circulation in certain areas to avoid crossing in opposite directions. And we do have a one-way entry and one-way exiting. And going back to what Jim was saying, this is going to be important to understand how your building works, understanding the elevator policies with the building, and if you're going to be using the stairs, who else will be using the stairs and how will those stairs be cleaned. And then as well, obviously, we have our directional signage and wayfinding throughout. So then we took from our circulation plan, we started looking at specific areas of our space. And this is an example of our workspace. And really the biggest thing to take away and the most immediate is to de-densify your space. You can remove furniture and reconfigure furniture that hinders the social distancing. You can also utilize flexible working areas to increase your social distancing. So this will be important for offices that can't reconfigure their space. If you can't put everybody at their desks because you don't have this 6-foot distancing, you can begin to start using other areas of your space. If you have phone booths, focus areas, single lounge seating, and even taking conference rooms offline and use those as working areas, specifically because they have the technology in them, so they'd be a great space to use. Common areas, these follow the same recommendations. These are just a higher impact area. So when we were looking at these spaces, we identified the high touch surfaces to inform the cleaning procedures, which then moved to removing the materials that can't be cleaned easily, and then possibly taking some equipment offline. You don't have to remove it, but taking it offline to limit contamination. We actually have our coffee bar and our snack area offline temporarily. But as the phases move forward, we will be putting those back in use. And then creating a circulation plan for denser spaces. This is of our work area or our work cafe. We do have a generous space, but some break rooms, some print rooms, they're much smaller. You're going to want to plan for those like you were planning for the entering and exiting of your overall space. You're going to monitor how many people are coming in and out of that space and maybe have a circulation plan and limit the amount of people. You'll be designating physical distancing guidelines in the kitchen and in any areas where people will be making food as well. But if you do have a larger area, this is a great place too, as a secondary working space if you can't work at your desk. So these diagrams just show how we started looking at our furniture and equipment, looking at our private offices and our workstations, what surfaces required daily cleaning, what furniture needed to be removed, if we needed to add any panels or any dividers for separation, and then looking at our open spaces. Could those be used for working spaces? And could we use those also for collaborative spaces? When people come in, can we safely distance them, but still be able to communicate, collaborate, and use technology? Using mobile technology and mobile furniture is going to be really important and imperative. It's not a new concept to the workplace world, but if you don't have these types of items currently, you might want to start thinking about budgeting them for the future. And then when we've completed your whole analysis, you want to communicate and share the message properly with signage and wayfinding. Reflect your company values, instill a sense of community. It's a stressful time for everybody, and communicating in a way that is friendly and maybe adding some levity to your signage will be important. Signage should assist in the entire journey through the space, from beginning to the end of when you exit. The sign should remind people how they live and move in the space. This will inform long-term behavioral changes. And then integrate your brand. Think long-term. These signs will probably be in the space for a while. A sign should integrate with the architecture of the space by color and form, aesthetics. If a sign looks haphazard or off-brand, it may not send a unified and positive message. And then finally, the future. What are we going to be looking at in the months to come? And this is actually an exciting part for us. Our team, this is where our team is developing our plans. And we believe the office space is going to remain a vital part in driving growth and innovation. How it looks may change. We don't believe that the office is going to go back to 50 enclosed offices and a maze of corridors and 72-inch panels. People need to be social. Human interaction is important. Networking is important. Mentoring is vital. People will need to get back to the office. You can't mentor completely working from home. And also innovation. Innovation comes from spontaneous interaction, and your spaces are going to need to provide this. And I believe your employees are going to start requiring it. Collaboration spaces will need to be inspiring, high performing with technology, and safe. And then what will your business culture require? So after the pandemic subsides, will you be going back to the office full time? Are you going to be 100% present, or will you start having a work from home culture? that is going to probably change how you rearrange your space. If you are working from home, the times that you are going to be coming into the office most likely won't be doing more focused work. You're going to come into the office and want to socialize. You're going to be meeting with clients. You are going to be collaborating. Your space is going to want to reflect that. So perhaps you may have less working space, private space, and have more collaboration spaces. And then if there's anything to leave here today, and what Jim was saying earlier, is organizations need spaces that can adjust easily and quickly. Buildings and interior spaces will need to withstand and recover from disturbances. So it's not just the pandemic, it will be flu and cold season, climate and weather, and even for your own business needs. Businesses change, they need to adapt to that. Implement what is feasible in the short term and work to achieve greater resilience in stages. And then finally, focus on wellness and health. I mean, that is probably what we are focusing on, the immediate, and it is going to be long-term. We are familiar with touchless fixtures. We're going to be seeing more of those. Everyone is familiar with touchless sinks, automated doors, but really what we're may start seeing is smarter technology in buildings, starting to think about utilizing those. They are already in place. They are used for building systems, but now starting thinking about how are you approaching the site? How are you going from the parking garage and traveling vertically through the office? And we may start seeing more smart technology rather in just urban areas. And then overall cleaner spaces. Really it's, Evan will be discussing this in greater detail, but in the interior, installing materials that are non-porous, easy to clean, and then really understanding what you are putting into your space and understanding how to clean it and sanitize it. And then Evan will be talking in more detail about cleaner spaces and air quality.
All right. So HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. And in light of this pandemic, it was originally ignored, and then it became a real heavy focus for everybody in every industry. And to some degree, it sounds like that's subsided with some of the more recent findings and research that is coming out about this virus, how it's transformed, how it travels across spaces. But I would argue it's still important for a general system to have a good, healthy indoor air environment. So HVAC, kind of as a general overview, how a building and a system, an HVAC system was constructed is really reflective of the time and the usage of the building when it was originally installed. They are constantly being updated by building codes, by regulations, mandating certain things, airflows. There are positive best practice guidelines for air velocity, how air is distributed. So there are constant changes going on year to year with these systems. So a lot of the older HVAC systems that you see were designed to really focus on space temperature and odor primarily, some of the tangible impacts of indoor air quality. A lot of the other things that people think of, you know, humidity control or anything else, wasn't really a main focus. It was that one person in that one office is too hot, give them a thermostat, and they should be good to go. Today's buildings, with a lot of the changes and the way architecture and interior design is rethinking zoning and buildings, it requires a lot more of a balance and a lot more interplay. And there needs to be significant coordination between what the architects and designers want the space to be and how the HVAC system will then serve that need. And it's just something to think about. An open office will have a very significant difference in what it looks like for an HVAC system than enclosed offices. Again, different needs, different loads, and all of that comes into play, especially now. So again, this is a 3D model of our HVAC system in our building. This is something that you design and install once in the life of the building, and you would very rarely change it. So whatever you have above your ceiling today is likely what you're going to have tomorrow, and what you're going to have the day after that, and 10 years from now. And it's about understanding what you have and how you can adjust and how you can change. Understanding what is in your control to modify and make better. It is expensive to be installing new ductwork every 5 years. So, like everybody's already mentioned, one of the first things to do is to open lines of communication, specifically as it relates to HVAC systems. If you're a tenant, talk to your landlord. If you're a landlord, talk to your tenant. And if you have any stake in any of the HVAC systems, talk to your local mechanical contractor that you routinely deal with on a day-to-day. You may be responsible for your rooftop unit that provides heating and cooling, or you might be connected to a central system and you don't have any responsibility. You are just given air from your HVAC that meets whatever requirements are in the lease agreement. So, things on the left, we have just kind of a bullet point list of initial questions and things that can be asked and things that can be talked about. Some of these are in your control, some are not. Some of these can be adjusted, some may not. But it's a starting point of things to think about when it comes to what is the best way to attack this virus or any virus from an HVAC perspective. What can we do to make the indoor environment better? So the next couple of slides are real world examples of things that I've seen in my work, and then conveying that to how it relates to today and what everybody is facing coming back into their offices, and some recommendations of what to do and what not to do. So the first thing is if you have a building management system that controls the mechanical aspects of your building, look into it, take a view, see what it's doing, see what it says it's doing. If you have time, physically check the unit to make sure that that what it says it's doing is actually what it is doing. The photo on the right, it's a little blurry, but it's showing the return air damper on an air handler at open 100%. So it's pulling all of the air that it sends to the space back from the space. And the outside air damper that's bringing fresh outside air into the building was set to 0% open. Obviously, all of the guidelines and guidance that we are seeing come out today are to flush the building with outside air, to overventilate spaces, to increase overall airflow. And if you look at your unit and it's operating in this manner, this is in direct conflict with that. It's also in conflict with codes that are set in place for indoor air quality and environment. Next is the filters and filter systems that your air handlers may be installed with. You may have options and opportunities to increase the filtration. Depending on your equipment, you may not, and you may have to do the best you can. This is a good time to review your filter changeout schedule. A lot of people do it semi-annually. We've seen quarterly, depending on the environment. It may need monthly. Depends on how your building is operating. We see dirty filters all the time. My favorite is seeing when the mechanical contractor writes a date of installation on the air handler on the filter. And that way we know somebody was here, somebody inspected the unit, and this is the date they did it. Or in instances like the photo on the right, there were 2 missing filters in this filter rack, which kind of limits any goal of installing filters in the first place. The air is just going to go right around it. Typically, you'll see MERV 8 filters in offices. MERV is a efficiency rating for filters. The recommended guidelines are to increase that to a MERV 13. And that will help make a better environment for the inside and clean more of that space. Another thing to look at and to pay attention to is your ductwork. Again, ductwork can be installed for over 50 years, just sitting in your space. They do collect dust. They do get pretty gross. And it's important to clean those out. Again, not only just for this virus, but just in general. It is a good practice to do and to stay on top of if you can. It creates a place for unwanted growth within your system that can lead to other sicknesses beyond just a place for viruses to group together. One of the other major aspects, we have exhaust fans. Exhaust fans will generally help keep the building pressure where it needs to be. They were designed to be installed for a reason, and you would expect to have them running for that same reason. All too often when we're doing surveys and inspections, you'll see something like on the right. Clearly the fan on the top is exhausting warm air from the building. It's melting all the snow nearby. The fan on the lower right was not in operation. It was broken and hadn't been repaired in a number of months. It was just sitting like that. We see that all the time, but especially now, maintaining pressurization, especially negative pressurization in bathrooms and toilet rooms, in places where there are a lot of people gathering, it's important. It's important with this virus to keep the air flowing where it should be going. One of the other features to look out for is humidification in buildings. We are entering our summer cooling season where you will be cooling air, you will be taking moisture out of the air. Not many systems have any form of humidification. It's usually like in the photo in science and tech that we'll see some direct steam injection humidification, or that there are other means of humidification for buildings. With virus bacterias, as well as just for human comfort, it's ideal to keep the humidity between 40 and 60% in your space. That helps limit bacterial and viral growth. It also maintains a comfortable environment for the people within the space. So I know that was a lot of kind of existing things that you can look at and do for your HVAC. It is important to have an understanding, a depth of understanding of how your systems operate, how they are installed, how they work. And you may not be the expert for that. Like Jim mentioned, that you need to include a full team of people to kind of understand this. And your mechanical contractor or your building maintenance staff, they should be your first line for a lot of this. Things that are important today in the virus that we're facing is important tomorrow. It was important yesterday. Keeping your building at a comfortable space temperature level, humidity, all of that is important. And it doesn't increase in importance now. It was always important, but it has an increased focus now to make sure that we're doing the best we can. Other aspects to look out for are the people load in your building. Obviously, a vacant building has no people in it. The heating and cooling load, as well as some of the other aspects of the air handler systems, change. You will have different heating and cooling parameters of a vacant building than a building that's full of people. And understanding that, maybe making some short-term changes and then reinstituting to a normal operation may make sense. As allowable, upgrading the building management system so you have a better view and control of your systems is a good short-term and long-term improvement. One thing that is getting a lot of looks now, it's generally always been installed in certain industries. It is getting a deeper look for commercial now, is UVC. It can generally be installed upper air, so it's at ceiling height, shining UV light across the ceiling, helping deter growth in the actual space where the people are. UVC retrofit or coming with air handlers as an install option, that can help prohibit growth of bacteria or unwanted things on actual coils within the air handler itself to help limit any of that propagation as well. And then farther on down the road, do the best with what you can today. But maybe in a year from now, you really want to retrofit your systems and understand what you have, how you can make it better, so that way the next time this happens, you're in a better position. And when it comes time to replace equipment, understand how your building has changed and how you need the flexibility and the variability in order to monitor and manipulate some of these things in the future to have a better control of it. So that these are just some of the aspects that I'm looking at when I'm going into buildings and assisting with some of the COVID responses that we're seeing.
Thanks, Evan. Here's a summary. We just wanted to circle back and remind people of things you can do today. Identify your team, monitor the guidelines, de-densify the space, and make sure you're talking to the building managers and owners and communicating. And then for future, plan for flexibility. Again, this is going to be something that's just not pandemic related. Design for wellness and wealth, budget for future upgrades, and make changes that fit your people's culture. And we want to thank everybody for joining us today. When you have any questions, this is our contact information too, if you want to reach out to us. We also want to share, this is new, I was just told about this last night, but we do have a survey that we have on our website. We're interested in hearing what everybody is doing in this area, specifically the upstate New York area. And we're going to be taking this information and publishing it later on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We do have some questions from our audience. The first one is pertaining to screens. Screens, are there concerns regarding the material, fire codes, and smoke?
Yes, acrylic, glass, obviously that has a higher budget item, but I would recommend glass over acrylic. There's plexiglass and there's different grades of plexiglass. They do scratch, but you can get a thicker grade plexi. And then looking at for fire codes, I do know for our educational clients that they can't use plexiglass in their space. However, we do have a higher grade plexi in our space, but when in doubt, glass is really the best item you can use for cleanability as well.
The same person is asking, just for their own information, how are you addressing the use of screens in the workspaces with the clients that you're working with? Are you seeing a high use of screens?
So to be honest with you, a lot of our clients are still working from home. We have been, I'm talking to them. We have new clients we're working with that are going to be going into new spaces. So we're talking to them about a resilience plan. We have looking at dividers. Now these are, you can actually pop dividers on top of your workstation systems. So working within the furniture system you have. but also dividers that are on wheels. You can actually use marker boards or things that do double duty that you can move around and slide. So that way, if 10 people are in the office that day, and then another 5 people, or they vacate, that can move around instead of putting permanent screen, or not permanent screens, but screens that attach to the work systems. Mobility, anything that can move is easier.
Yeah, great idea. Great idea. The next question is about the New York State DOH plan. This person thought that they just had to have the New York State DOH plan on site. They were not aware that it had to be sent anywhere with the statement from the owner. Can you give some guidance on where that is sent to?
Yeah, Liz, I'll take care of that one. Great question. And yeah, it definitely does need clarification. So between the summary guidelines and the detailed guidelines, you won't be sending a copy of your plan to the state. You are correct that that copy needs to be posted conspicuously on site. But you will be sending in your affirmation that you've done the planning. So at the end of the detailed guidelines, there's a link provided. At that link, you're going to affirm that you have read and understood your obligations to operate in accordance to this guidance, and you're going to input your information there. You will receive an email back from them saying that they received your affirmation.
Great, thank you. The next question is about guidance on workstation walls that separate workstations. Even if 6 feet distancing is established, is there a height recommendation?
Jim, I don't know if you want to answer that about or airborne travel. We have, if you have any more information on that, but we have looking at 52 to 54 inches, a comfortable, somewhat standing height. It's when you're seated, really. You want to have that protection and not being able to face people. So 42 is relatively low. That is probably what you're seeing in more open work environments. That was for views. That's so you could see one another. And now taking a panel up to 52 or 54, I think is appropriate, because it's really about when you're seated. Of course, if you have a stand-up desk, it could still work. But going up to 72 inches, 6 feet is quite high. But I don't know if Jim, if you have something you can offer.
Yeah, so what we typically did with this is we do have a number of offices with that 54 inches, and when people are seated, they are able to be social distance with a barrier between them. On those shorter ones, we've actually looked for spacing people 6 foot away from each other, or if we're unable to do that, putting some sort of temporary barrier in between them. The whole key here is that we don't have people come face to face with each other inside of that 6 foot social distancing rule. So for those situations where you have a shorter wall, as long as it's high enough to keep people from face to face, being face to face together within that 6 foot distancing, what we did was implement immediately upon getting up from your desk, you're putting on your face mask before you're navigating around the office. So there are ways to work around that. You need to see what's going to fit for you, and if you're able to keep that 6 foot social distancing and keep people from working face to face to one another.
Yeah, along the same lines, one of the big concerns with people is that the latest information on how the virus is transmitted is, involves a couple of things that offices have, and that is that you're indoors versus outdoors. And that in a lot of instances, you are in a situation where you have to be next to somebody all day long. So is there anything else you're seeing or recommending beside what we just talked about, the panels, the masks? Any other advice on if somebody is, even if they're 6 feet apart, sitting next to someone all day, and how they can be the best safeguard?
I don't know if Jim,
Oh, you're muted, Suzanne.
You're muted, Suzanne.
I was going to say if Jim was going to answer this or not. But if space allows, I mean, an easy one for our role is if you can move.
Yeah.
I mean, most offices are equipped with Wi-Fi now. We're pretty agile. If you're tethered to your desk, then I would say distancing or letting your supervisor know or someone know that you're not comfortable. And I think that's where it really is. It's really about the comfort level. And I don't know if Jim, if you want to offer anything else.
I think part of that is we know that implementing 6-foot social distancing and face coverings are the two major protections there that are going to help people. We've gone to, in one office, actually putting people in every other workspace to create that distancing. We've also gone to the point where we do have some lower walls and have moved to those acrylic type separations. Or in some instances, we have project boards that are on foam core boards that can actually be put up between the desk spaces to eliminate that face-to-face between our people. So just kind of being creative in what you're going to do. First of all, you're going to look to see, can I move people around and separate them? And when you can't, then look to maybe some of those movable boards that we were talking about, the dry erase boards that we can move around the office, or foam core boards, or acrylic.
Very good. Good ideas. Another audience member asks that they recently purchased a handheld travel UV-C sanitizing light wand to use for their desk area, keyboard, phone, mouse, cell phone. How well do these work in real office spaces? The handheld travel UV-C sanitizing light.
Yeah, so UV is there's enough research out there, and it's used in enough places, and there's enough background about it that people generally accept and understand that it will either help to limit growth or kill by destroying the outer shell of the virus or the bacteria. How it works, there's a couple different factors, and I'll try not to get too deep into this, but bear with me. Number one is the actual light spectrum. There are different grades of UV, and having the right wavelength, the proper wavelength is important. Number two and number three are exposure time and strength of light. So if you have a UV light and you just kind of breeze it over real fast, it's not going to do anything. It really takes, unless it's a super powerful light. If you have a low grade light that's low power, it needs to stay on for a longer period of time. And that's, without having more details about what it is, how it operates, that's kind of the general guidance. Is it takes exposure time and power, as well as the appropriate wavelength of UV to kind of get the full picture. And then just as a last note, be careful with some plastics and other items that may be on your desk, and to make sure that you're not going to degrade them and destroy, have some secondary effects of harming equipment that is not capable of withstanding the UV light.
That was worth the admission in today for anyone who's using those. That is it for our questions. I would say, Susan, Evan, Jim, do you have any parting comments before we close up?
Thank you for having us. We enjoyed putting this together.
Well, really, really great information, a lot to think about as we start to enter the real world again, leaving our homes.
That's right. Thank you.
I will I would like to just inform our audience too that if you go onto our website, thepartnership.org, we have something called BNP Business Link. And at any time, no matter the subject, you can ask a question, and we have a technical assistance team that answers the questions. And we often go to our members like Bergman for the most up-to-date information. So we welcome that to you and to your friends, families, and business associates. It's a service that we'd like to offer the business community. It's been ongoing and it's been quite helpful. I want to thank Bergman, Suzanne, Evan, Jim. This information has been great. I think our audience is quite appreciative, and thanks for being here. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.